Hello everyone, welcome to this year AmiWest. I hope that everyone has a lot of fun. First of all, I'd like to thank AmiWest for giving me the opportunity to talk to you about MediaVault, my latest project. But before that, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Sokianos. I'm a software engineer. I'm Greek, and the last 3 years I work in Ireland, in Dublin. I'm a beta tester for AmigaOS 4 and AmigaOS 3, and also I'm beta testing X1000, X5000, and the enhancer package from Aeon. I'm a system administrator and developer on various Amiga websites, and also I have developed a couple of other projects like Kami, AIO Streams, and Epignosis. But let's see what we are going to see today. I'm going to talk to you about what MediaVault is and how you can use it, about the development environment and the tools that I like to use, and also the challenges and problems that I had to solve. And at the end, I'm going to talk to you about my future plans about MediaVault. So first, MediaVault is an open source desktop application for AmigaOS 4, which can be used to discover online audio and video content. And what do I mean by saying only online audio and video content? I'm talking about radio stations, podcasts, and movies and music from DLNA servers that you might have at your home, on your local network, like Plex, Jellyfin, Godi, MB, and some others. Actually, I started this application because there is no other podcast application for AmigaOS 4. There were AmiPodder at some point, which it is not maintained currently for a long time now, and the idea is quite different because on AmiPodder you had to know exactly the RSS feeds of the podcast that you want to listen to, but on MediaVault you go on the application and you search about podcasts, and you can discover different podcasts to listen to. Also, there's no application that supports DLNA servers, and MediaVault is a better application to discover and manage your radio stations. By that I mean that one other application supports Shoutcast radio stations, and this is TuneNet, but not the old free version that you can find and download. Currently, only the updated version that is coming with Enhancer supports Shoutcast servers, so there is no free version about that. And about management, I mean that in later versions of MediaVault, I plan to have a way for you to mark the favorite radio stations and be able to find them pretty fast and listen to them. Also, my eagerness to learn how to code in a better way in C and how things are working in AmigaOS 4 drive me to develop this application. And that's why I'm trying to do clean, easy to read code with good quality and the best practices that I can find, so that others can get inspired or get parts of this application and use them on their own projects. That's why I keep that MediaVault open sourced available on GitHub. My first release was back in the 30th of April, so it's a pretty new application, and I had 7 releases so far. And let's have a demo to show you how MediaVault is working. So you can start MediaVault from the workbench, and here you can see the main window of MediaVault. At the left side we have a list of choices where you can select to listen to radio stations and the popular radio stations or the trending radio stations, and also to search about podcasts and trending podcasts. Both radio stations and podcasts, the information about those sources are coming from online services which MediaVault contacts and gets the information. For example, if I search for a radio station that plays the blues, from United States of America and click the button Discover. Instantly you get a list of radio stations. I can click on one of them, for example this one. I see the avatar, some information, and if I click on play button, I can actually load it on the player and listen to that. The same thing you can do with podcasts. You can search for something that interests you and discover. You can click the podcast and get some information here, the avatar image, and some information about this podcast, and then a list of the latest 100 episodes. By clicking one of them, you see information about this episode, and the play button is enabled, and you can click on that and listen to the podcast, to the actual podcast. Also, you can see here that I'm using Emotion as my main player, because from my experience, Emotion is the best player to listen to music, and later when I'm going to introduce the DLNA support on servers and watch movies, I will use Emotion as well. Here we have also the selection about trending podcasts. You can select a specific category of podcasts, for example in news, in let's say English, Discover, and a list of these kind of podcasts are coming up, and you can select another podcast. You see the information and you can see the episode. You have also the ability to select which player you are going to use. There is a temporary solution on this version, which I use a script. This is actually a script of commands, and you can change here which player you want to use. If you don't want to use Emotion, you can use FF Play, which is free, or Amiga AMP 3. This way the user can select which player he wants to use. He can also change the paths, and he can use whatever he wants. So let's get back to my presentation. My development environment. I'm using my X5000 and I develop on that machine with the latest SDK 53.30 and the two updates that were released from Hyperion. I'm using GCC 8 and Make. Those are all available on OS for the bot. I'm started working on MediaVault using CodeBench. Actually, that application helped me a lot to create the structure of the files and also create the first make file. And I use that for that because there is an automated way to do it, and it helps a lot when you start your project. And also after quite a long where my code became much bigger, I started using Cubic IDE because it is a lot faster, especially on scrolling in the pages. I'm also using SDK browser because I need to find information in the Autodocs, and SDK browser is possibly the best Autodoc viewer out there, and it is completely free. And because I have my code on GitHub, I use sgit to make the commits, create the branches, and merge changes. So sgit is the best tool to do it, possibly the only tool to do it. And GitHub is the repo that I have all the code for everyone to see and even contribute if you want. And also, because I like to have a good quality of code, I use an online service called Codacy.com, which has some automated tests. And whenever I commit my changes, an updated report comes up from them about the changes and the quality, the code quality of my project. The libraries that I use is Jansson.library, which is necessary for me to parse JSON data that I get from the online services. And also, when I started to working on MediaVault, the first thing that I needed to do is to communicate with the online services. So OO.library is a good library to use about that because it has a feature to communicate. It simplifies a lot the development on communicating with online websites. And it uses also AmiSSL that gives you the ability to connect and talk to secure websites. After version 1.3, I dropped OO.library for library kernel and library OpenSSL, and we will see later for the reason. So the challenges that I had to deal with: network access, first of all. It is the basic and most interesting part of MediaVault, and the first thing that I wanted to learn how it works. And at the start, I learned that when you are creating an application in C, you have to use WebSockets to do connection with any other server out of your machine. So I tried that, and the implementation was quite big, a lot of lines just to communicate with a website, not even starting to get the data. So it was complicated, but I learned how to do it. I have a proof of concept on how I can use WebSockets to talk to DLNA servers on my local network, but yeah, I didn't continue developing anything with the WebSockets, and that's when OO library came in to the MediaVault. When I started to working with OO library, it simplified everything, so it made everything so easy for me to communicate with websites, get images, download data. But after a while, I saw that OO library is not mature enough. It had a lot of issues, and I figured out that it is not the library that I need for MediaVault, and that's why I dropped it for library kernel, which comes from the Unix environment, and it is developed by so many people, and it is quite mature, and it has, with much less code, you can communicate and get data from any server. And it has also some automations, like if the web server redirects you to another URL, library kernel does that automatically, but not OO.library. One of my first thoughts was, how will I develop MediaVault? Is it going to be reaction or a magic user interface? To be honest, I wanted to learn how to code in reaction. The next thing that was a challenge for me are these warning parameters for the compiler. When you start developing something in CodeBench, by default has these warning parameters there, and whatever you do, you get warning as an error, so you can't compile. That pushed me more to learn to write better code and to understand how things are working. So, for example, you have a variable that you never defined what it is, so you have to do it. Or you have a defined variable, but you are not using that anywhere, so you have to use it somehow. And that's a thing that helped me a lot to make better code. And also that's what helped me understand how things are working when you build something in C. And also other things, the idea on how to do stuff. For example, if you have a list on your left and you click on something, how you change the other parts of the application, changing pages. For that, it is difficult to find information about what's the idea behind that. For that, I had to ask on forums, on Oxford Coding, and there people helped me a lot to understand how this is working, and many times they helped me with examples, code examples that I understood and brought them into the application. Another challenge that I had was Amiga versus Unix epoch, which is about the timestamp, how you deal with timestamps. The podcast API that I'm using from the online service requires to send the time of the request. and they have only 3 minutes of a window. So when you send a request, it has to be inside these 3 minutes based on the timestamp that they have on the server. And the Amiga timestamp comes with 8 years difference. Thank God I found that information while I was talking to another developer on IRC channels, and he explained that to me, so I made the necessary changes, and I managed to make it work on MediaVault. And the last thing that was a little bit of challenge was that around the start of August, SGit stopped working with GitHub because of the changes that GitHub did on their side. So I was completely lost because I couldn't commit my changes and I couldn't work without a version control system. The first thing that I decided to do is to build my own version control system. So I created my own server somewhere on one of my servers that I have, and I use that. But someone from Amigan's forums told me that SGit works just fine with GitHub by using a token password, and that's what I did. On my journey on how to understand and learn things, the help from the community was tremendously, and they helped me a lot. I have to thank the contribution from Daniel Zedlika, who actually he was one of the people that took my code and made fixes and sent that to me. And whenever I had a question about why we should do that this way and not that way, he was there to make me understand and help me see the better way of writing the code. And also people from OS4 Coding, Amigans, they helped me with all my questions, and I thank them all. You can find very nice documentation on wiki.amigaos.net, which is quite helpful. And if you happen to talk with other Amiga users and developers on IRC channels, don't you ever afraid to ask them about some problems that you have with development on Amiga OS. So yeah, we have a very nice community, and thanks everyone for that. And not only that, you need to learn a few things from tutorials and books. I'm watching a lot of courses, online courses. I can propose these ones here. From Jakob Sorber, the video tutorials about C. He's working a lot with C and C++, especially for embedded systems. It doesn't have to do anything with Amiga OS, but you can apply a lot of things from there to your code. And also Daniel Sternberg, who does video tutorials on YouTube. Daniel Sternberg is the developer behind the library curl, and yeah, he's the best source about that. Also, I found a very interesting course on Udemy called Advanced C Programming Course, and I recommend it for everyone if you can buy it and watch it, because it has a lot of information and understand how things are working. The book that I'm reading and use a lot is Sam's Teach Yourself C in 21 Days from Bradley Jones and Peter Aitken. And it is a huge book which has a lot of information there. And last but not least, the SDK examples and the Autodocs have a lot of information. The SDK examples is the first thing that you can use to start actually building something on your new project. So, my future plans. First of all is to introduce DLNA media server support to make a way to MediaVault to find your local DLNA servers and list them at the side, and then click them and have a way to find the movies that you have on that server and click on them and view them on your player. That will be an awesome feature for us, I believe. I want to use a SQLite where I will have a database to store the favorites or the last watched and listened podcasts and movies, so you can find, for example, if you have a favorite podcast and that podcast has new episodes, you are going to have a notification about that, and a way to see that quite easy. I want to create a good preferences window where you can select your players from there and not by messing around with a script that, like what I have right now, to make it easier for everyone to use. I'm talking with Soundcast to get access to their API and give to the user an alternative way to discover radio stations. As soon as they provide me this access, I'm going to work on that as well. To have notifications, like I said before, when you start MediaVault, you are going to get some information inside MediaVault, but if you have it minimized and at some point a new episode of your favorite podcast comes up and it is live, I'd like to have a notification on your workbench and get that information instantly to the user. Something else that I would like to do is to have local support, to have MediaVault translated to anyone's preferred language. And also on that, I would like to use the character set library to translate some of the information that you get from the podcast, because right now everything is Unicode, and I'd like to change the fonts to be readable actually on users' computer. One thing that I'm thinking to do in the future is to port it to AmigaOS 3 users. This will give the opportunity for others to use MediaVault, especially for people that are using AmigaOS 3, Apollo OS, even on Morphos computers. I believe that they are not going to have any issues to use the AmigaOS 3 version. And last but not least, I would like to set up a CI/CD deployment environment for the next releases to happen automatically. So what you have to remember from this presentation, you have to remember that it is easy to develop an Amiga for Amiga. The tools are available, they are out there, you can get them free of charge and start working on your project, on your big idea that you have and you would like to see that happen. Our community helps a lot, and we can create applications that use online services. We don't need browsers, so I would suggest stop waiting for a browser. There is a way to do it with local applications like MediaVault. Is talking with online services, and it takes the information and brings it in front of you to use it. If you like what I'm doing, please support me on coffee.com/Volkero. I have some tremendous supporters there who help me build MediaVault, and that's my presentation. Let's discuss. You can find that presentation on that URL and also the MediaVault on GitHub. Thank you for watching this presentation, and I hope to talk to you soon.